Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 6 of Being Yourself Loudly. You may notice today's look a little different, and that's because I am here on your screens. I have finally figured out how to record video and audio at the same time on this fancy ass microphone, so I'm really excited to be here. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different from previous episodes because I'm talking a little bit more about current events, what's been going on with me, and less about one singular topic. That being said, in today's episode, we are going to touch on a few things that are really important to me, which are sound baths and energy healing, as well as some inner child healing work. This is all because of a road trip that Richard and I just got back from that I'm excited to share with you guys about. I'm also going to be talking a lot about, what's happening in current events in the world because there is a fuck ton happening and I'm overwhelmed, as you guys are probably as well. So I just wanted to hold some space to kind of have some fun with this episode in a little bit of a less formal way. So, let's get to it. Hi, my name is Isabel and I am a writer and mental health advocate who is passionate about helping young people live their best lives, no matter where they are at on their mental health journey. As a bisexual Jewish Gemini from Rochester, New York, I let mental illness invisibly rule the first 23 years of my life. But after hitting rock bottom just a year after graduating from NYU, I finally realized that if I truly wanted to be happy, I had to do the work. With a mix of medication, mindfulness, and dialectical behavioral therapy, I somehow managed to not just live, but thrive with my mental illness. And now I want to pay it forward. Meditation, spirituality, hustle culture, sex, and love are all topics we discuss here, along with a bunch of tangible skills that can help you be your best self, even if your brain chemicals are all out of whack. This is Being Yourself Loudly. So, before we get into today's episode, I want to say that I cannot believe it has been 2 months since I launched this podcast. And as of today, I have officially reached 1,000 plays of the podcast, which is huge to me. I'll show you guys for those who are watching. 1,000! Yes! Oh, go Isabel! Yeah! Okay, anyways, to be quite honest with you guys, the whole reason why I started this podcast was because book publishers keep telling me that I need to build my platform before they will publish my book. But now that I've been doing this for a few months now, it actually feels a little bit bigger than that. Not to be all simpy or whatever, but I feel like I actually might be making a difference for people. I don't know, my imposter syndrome is kicking in as I say that, but the feedback I've gotten from you guys is really great and it feels like we're actually connecting here. So, ultimately I think that it's going well and I'd love to hear what you guys think. So anyways, just thank you to everyone who has been listening and who supported me and continues to support me on this journey. You really have no idea how much it means to me. So thank you. So on to the topics of this week. Since this is still my first season, I'm exploring different formats. Until now, I've had around one theme per episode. While I definitely think I still want to continue that in the future, I feel like there's a lot going on right now that I want to talk about so many different things. And like most of you, I have been feeling all of the feelings, and I thought that it might be a good time to just talk about what's happening in my world and in the world in general and how I'm coping with it, and with advice thrown in there too. So just to, catch you all up, Richard and I recently got back from a 2-week-long road trip down the West Coast. It was awesome. We started in Seattle and went all the way down the one to Newport Beach. I got to try out my film camera for the first time, and it was a truly breathtaking experience to get to see the entire West Coast. There's so much more, but it was really cool. We camped for most of it in our car, which is great. Shout out to Subaru. But then we also stayed in some houses in San Francisco, Santa Barbara, and with Richard's mom in Newport. I tried not to work too much over the 2 weeks because I was feeling honestly pretty burnt out and uninspired. So I mainly spent the time writing and kind of doing some internal work. And it was on that road trip where I had 2 magical experiences that I really wanted to share with you guys because I feel like you guys would dig it. So before the road trip, my therapist challenged me to take some time alone, even if it was just a day or two, mainly so I could get reacclimated with myself. Because Richard and I both work from home, we've pretty much spent every single day together for the last 3 years. While there is no one that I love hanging out with more than him, prior to our relationship, I was super independent and I spent a lot of time by myself. So, she thought it would be a good idea for me to see what it feels like to have to do that again. And I knew that there would be a few days during the road trip that were unplanned, so I decided to take myself to Joshua Tree while Richard hung out with some of his friends in LA. So, like any important experience, at least for me, I wanted to set my intentions so that I could go in with a clear goal and vision of what I wanted to accomplish during my alone time. For me personally, setting intentions is an incredibly important tool or really step for any kind of healing work. And I recommend trying it if you haven't. So for me, here's what I wanted to get out of my solo time. So there were a couple things. The first was I wanted more patience and presence in my life to practice gratitude for what I have. I also wanted to focus on the things that I could control and less on what I can't control. I also wanted some clarity on how the patriarchy has impacted my personal narratives. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that intention specifically. But the last one was that I will trust the process. So I have a hard time staying grounded and present because I'm constantly looking towards the next thing. But recently in therapy, I've been asking the question of will I ever be satisfied? Will anything ever be enough? Because I've had so many goals in my life and I've been really grateful that I've been able to accomplish them. But then I just keep adding goals. I just keep adding dreams. I feel like I'd rather live a life where I am completely happy and satisfied right where I am. And I'm still not quite sure how to do that. So I was hoping that this healing experience would do that for me. So with my overnight bag in tow and intentions clear in my mind, I took off to Joshua Tree. And I was going for the coolest thing ever, a sound bath at the Integratron. Okay, now you're probably like, what the fuck is that? Well, let me explain. So, in short, I guess, the Integratron, it's this really cool structure made entirely out of wood that's located in the desert. And when you go inside, they explained it as it's essentially like how it would sound if you were inside of a cello. So just incredible acoustics, sound just reverbing off everything. Just really cool. I had heard about it from my therapist and from other people who worked in healing in the SoCal area. So I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. And in case any of you are really into history or, want more information, the Integratron was built in the 1950s by this dude named George Van Tassel. And he basically claimed that the structure is based on the designs of Moses' tabernacle, the writings of Nikola Tesla, and telepathic directions from extraterrestrials. He really wanted to communicate with aliens, so essentially he built this building to be an electrostatic generator for the purpose of rejuvenation and time travel. Sick, right? And what I didn't know before, which I thought was the coolest thing about the Integratron, is that the location is an integral part of its functioning. And I'm going to quote from their website here because I could never say this in different words, but basically it's built on this piece of land, which is the intersection of powerful geomagnetic forces that, when focused by the unique geometry of the building, concentrate and amplify the Earth's magnetic field. What's really cool is that magnetometers, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, they read a significant spike in the Earth's magnetic field when you're in the center of the Integratron. I know it sounds like a bunch of BS, but the crazy thing is that when you actually arrive on the property, you can feel that energy shift. When I was driving up there and I was by myself, I was feeling a little bit anxious. I was not really sure what I was getting myself into. But once I arrived, it's like this wave of calm comes over you. I took some pictures on my film camera that I'll share once I develop them. So we basically just like hung out on the grounds. They have these like mister things because it was like 110 degrees, really freaking hot. And then once it was time to go in, we all lined up and then we entered this building. So once we were inside this building, they had this like really tall set of stairs leading to like this attic space. The whole place was like very minimal. So once we were upstairs, we climbed the steps like one by one. We each grabbed a sheet and we picked a cushion to lay down on. But before we did that, the guy who was going to be leading this, who was sitting in the room already, he told us that we should go into the center of the room and say one thing we are grateful for. And like all things that I participate in, I was obviously like the first one to go. #bravery. But not knowing what to expect, I went to the center and I said, I am grateful for my body's capacity to love and feel. And instead of it like echoing normally like I expected, you actually hear this like booming voice back to you that I swear to you guys, it sounds like the voice of God. Like it actually scared me. And it was the coolest thing ever. And the craziest part is that everyone else in the room, they don't hear it. All they hear is like my voice in like a whisper. So it's something about the architecture, and it's that like middle of the room spot where it creates this like sound tunnel thing. It was dope. So for those that don't know, a sound bath is a meditative experience where people are essentially like bathed in sound waves. And it goes back like thousands of years. So these sound waves are either produced by various like sources. It can be, healing instruments such as gongs, singing bowls, percussion, chimes, tuning forks, and even like the human voice itself. I've done a bunch of different sound baths, and I've found them all equally powerful. For this particular sound bath, it was around 35 minutes of 20 quartz crystal singing bowls played live. And what I thought was really cool about this experience is that each bowl is tuned to the energy centers or the chakras of the body, where they say is like sound is the nutrition for the nervous system. And what results when you play these bowls are like intense waves of like peace, heightened awareness, and major relaxation of the mind and body. So it's things like one bowl's tuned to like an F, and that one is related to like the heart chakra. So things like that, just so you get the gist. Overall, it was a really powerful experience for me because you can feel the sound waves literally going through your body. Like you can feel it in your bones. It was definitely relaxing. I definitely had this like heightened sense of awareness, but I personally found it a little bit difficult to like sink into my meditative state, probably because it had been like a couple weeks since I had meditated really seriously, and I was honestly just like super buzzed to be there. So regardless, I would say it was like a 10 out of 10 experience, and I will definitely be going back again. So after the sound bath ended, I felt really, really grounded and really calm. I walked around the property for a few more minutes, and then I got back in my car and I drove back to Palm Springs, which is where I was going to be staying for the night. What was interesting to me is that on the drive to the Integratron, I was like blasting country music, singing like as loud as I like a bear for my horses. You know what I mean? Like I was like really going in on these early 2000s countries. But then on the way back, I just sat in silence. It was almost it was very meditative for me because I just focused on the road and on the cars in front of me and breathing. Like I really didn't want any other noise to distract me because I felt so grounded and present that I just wanted to be there in the car, and that was it. Anyways, when I got back to Palm Springs, I had a lovely dinner with my cousin, and then I basically just spent like the rest of the night entertaining myself by writing. I brought some tarot cards that I did for myself, and I was just like chilling. I honestly hadn't had a house to myself in years, so I had forgotten how much I enjoyed my own company. I was excited to go back to Richard the next day, but it was interesting because, even just a few years ago, I used to hate being alone at night. Because of my anxiety and depression, nights were kind of always when things got worse. I literally used to like dread going to sleep and being alone because of how bad my intrusive thoughts were. And so much that, I just never did it. So the fact that I just like enjoyed that time alone just shows how much I've grown in the past years, which is just wild. Anyways, I almost forgot. I forgot to tell you guys that I was recently diagnosed with OCD. I was just reminded of that because I was talking about the intrusive thoughts, which honestly, I would have never been able to like say that that's what was happening to my brain. But I just wanted to throw that in that's new to me, and it's something I'm exploring, and I'm hoping to explore in a larger conversation with you guys later. But I did want to mention it because since being diagnosed with it, I've actually just had so much more clarity on myself and my brain, more than ever before. Anyways, back to my Isabel time. After my luxurious night alone in Bubby's house, where I killed probably 100 flies with my bare hands, it's my secret talent, I packed up the car and I headed to my next destination, Idyllwild. It's this small town in the San Jacinto Mountains, and I had planned on meeting this amazing healer. Her name is Ellen Wong, and we were going to do an energy exchange, including some breath work, a sound bath, and some guided visualization to help me connect with my inner child. We connected after a friend of mine posted about her on Instagram, and we set up a time to meet while I was in the LA area. It really kind of worked out beautifully, that it just felt like it was meant to be. So before I get into that work, I just want to say that I love energy work and I fully believe in its powers. The first time I tried it was before the wedding, and I worked with a Reiki practitioner, and I had some major breakthroughs like about myself and my family. And I think the coolest part about doing any kind of energy work, and it depends honestly on your experience, but for me, like I could literally feel the energy leaving my body. I was explaining it to a friend the other day that it feels similar to an orgasm in the physical sense of release, like where you have that build, and then release, except it's obviously not as like pleasureful. But TBH, like it might be in just a different way, but like you literally like your body like convulses and then energy flows out and you have this huge just like relief that comes over your entire body. It's very cool. So it's in, my past experiences with energy work where I began to build a relationship with my inner child, or as I call her, little Isabel. So before I talk about my experiences in Idyllwild, I wanted to explain what exactly, inner child healing means, because it might just seem like a mumbo jumbo for those that, don't really know anything about it. But I'm hoping that if you're listening, you are kind of already a fan of holistic healing, so it's not going to be too hard to grasp. So according to BetterUp, because I literally just was like, how to explain inner child work to someone who doesn't know, inner child work is an approach to recognizing and healing childhood trauma, by essentially recognizing that our behaviors as adults stem from our childhood experiences. And it focuses on addressing our unmet needs by reparenting ourselves. It's a kind of self-discovery that helps us understand our behaviors, triggers, and our needs. While I've done a lot of therapy, I haven't actually done a lot of work with the inner child. So I was kind of learning on the fly as I went through these energetic experiences. And essentially, when you begin to work with your inner child, you are able to go back in time, emotionally and mentally, to really any traumatic event and understand how your inner child feels from the perspective of an adult. And then from there, your adult self can then start to untangle some of these coping mechanisms that your younger self has built up because of that trauma. And that's where the healing takes place. While there are so many benefits to doing inner child work, the biggest for me is understanding how my past trauma impacted me as an adult, even just subconsciously. And I'll share some examples of it when I walk through my experience with Ellen, if you're curious to hear more. It's definitely quite personal work, and I'm grateful in instances like these that my dad does not listen to the podcast, because TBH, most of my healing is with that relationship. But of all the healing and the work that I've done, this has been the most profound for me. So the drive to Idyllwild was absolutely gorgeous. The mountain was breathtaking. Essentially, when you're going up this mountain, it starts as desert mountain, and then just as you kind of go up to the top, it just becomes greener and greener and greener, and it's just gorgeous. If you can get over the really scary turns at high speed, it's definitely worth the trip. And the town was super cute. I stopped for a snack right before I got to Ellen's because I hadn't eaten anything. And then finally I pulled up to this beautiful A-frame cabin in the middle of the woods. I swear to you guys, the air smelled so good. It was so clean. And the house was beautiful. Really big windows, a wraparound porch. We immediately went inside and we began just sitting and talking about, what's been going through my head and where I'm at emotionally. From there, we did a short grounding meditation before moving into some tarot cards that she had pulled before I got there. She had told me about this before, that she was going to be pulling these cards and kind of imagining my energy and all of these things, and then she would read them back to me when I arrived. So she did the pulling before I was there. So that was kind of really cool to me, because the things that she pulled really resonated with me, as most tarot cards do. So she pulled 3 cards. She pulled the High Priestess, which is a major arcana card. She pulled Death, which is scary but not as scary as it sounds, and Balance, more or less. I don't know exactly the name of the cards. She then talked about how she connected with my inner child while pulling those cards, and she had these visions almost while she was pulling the cards. So the first one, she pulled the cards and she imagined this little girl, kindergarten-esque age, who was raising her hand obsessively in class, trying to be called on by the teacher, trying to be seen. And immediately I'm okay, that's me, because I'm always the first person in class to raise my hand, but I also just as a kid, craved attention in the way of I just wanted to be loved and I wanted to be seen, and I just felt I had to try so hard to do it. So that really resonated with me, and I was yes, that's me. The next one she saw was the same little girl playing alone, really presently and grounded by this wooded creek. And this girl was in peace, that she said. She didn't really need anything else. What's crazy about that is that I'm pulling feathers out of my cushion as we talk, because they're sticking me, is that it reminded me of the backyard at this house that my dad moved to after he moved out of our home in Rochester. There's this house on a street called Lysander, so I just call it the Lysander house. And in the back, we had this beautiful wooded area, and it had a little creek running through it. and it had this tree that like we used to call it our rocket ship that we would go and play in because it was like the perfect climbing tree. But it was really interesting that she saw that, because when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time outside by myself playing, and I always felt so good when I was outside and connecting with nature in that way. When I told her that, she said that I needed to lean into that and that I really should be spending more time in nature, and especially like in water. And she's right. Like, honestly, like for me, like feeling the wind on my cheeks, like it gives me life. And I feel most at home, in the trees. And then after we, talked about those things, she had me connect with young Isabel. And she had me, tell her what it was I was connecting with. So I imagined young Isabel, who's around, I want to say like 3 or 4 or 5, like really little. She was wearing a yellow dress, and she had a white collar on and some white shoes. Recently I was looking at some pictures, and I found a picture of me at the exact age wearing that exact dress. So I knew who I was connecting with. And this girl, little Isabel, was so joyous and happy and just like completely unfazed by the cruelty of the world. And she had me approach this little girl in my mind. So just to like give you some context, at this point, I'm like laying down and we're talking and there's some music happening, but she's kind of guiding me through it. So I imagine myself, walking up to this little girl, and we're in the backyard at the house that I grew up in, not Lysander, but my OG house on Hibiscus Drive. And I sit with little Isabel under this really big tree in the backyard, like leaning up against it. And I just hold her on my lap, and I told her I loved her and that I would keep her safe. We're sitting there and we're rocking, and I told her that, it's not her fault that Dad left, that, she might get hurt, but it's not her fault. And I just kind of held her in that moment, and it was really clear in my head and really powerful. And at that point, we knew it was time that we were going to begin the breath work. So for the breath work, it's essentially just a series of different types of breathing. So for me, it was these big diaphragm belly breaths where you just go and you exhale it out. So she put on some music, and I had an eye mask on, and I was on a pillow, and I was really comfortable. And I basically just like focused on my senses and deep breathing from my diaphragm. And then we did that for a good 30 minutes or so. And while we're doing that, I'm having these visualizations that were honestly a little trippy. Like there's a lot of color happening, and I'm seeing like sound waves, but they're color waves. And it's going all around my body. And honestly, like it's a little overwhelming. And there were a couple moments where I was scared, because like any kind of trip or journey, it feels unnatural because we don't normally see colors moving all around us. And just want to mention, I'm like completely sober. So like I haven't done any kind of tripping, like no mushrooms. Like this is just breathing and energy work. So it does work. So then after the breath work, she led me in another visualization. And in this visualization, she led me to this beach, and I was with little Isabel. And then there's this golden door that pops up on the beach that can take me to a memory. And I got to pick the memory. And at this point, my mind is just kind of flowing, and I'm not thinking too hard about it. So the first memory that comes to mind, and I honestly don't know if these things are too personal to talk about, but I feel like I should. Um, I go back to this memory of when I was a little girl in my dad's kitchen on Lysander, and we were cooking and we were really happy. I remember we were making tacos. I was like stirring the pan. My dad was, adding in the spices and all of this. And then he gets a phone call on the landline. And it's my mom. I don't know what they're talking about, but they immediately start fighting, and he gets really, really angry, and it seems like he forgets that I'm there just because he's focused on this phone call and he's mad. They're fighting. They didn't really get along well after the divorce. And he, was holding the pan and he just kind of slams it down. And I remember getting like bit by some of the hot oil. Like not bad. I wasn't burned. But enough for me to get like to jump back and be like, whoa, that was too hot. And back in this memory, I see my dad, because remember, I'm like in the shoes of the little girl, but I'm still an adult in my mind, so I'm looking back with fresh eyes. And for the first time, I see my dad in a lot of pain. And in that moment, she has me think more about my dad, and think about him when he was that age, so the age that he was in that kitchen. And he walks towards us on the beach, and I tell him that I see him and that I see his pain, because I had never really thought about his experience during the divorce or during the marriage or any of that, because I was always so focused on, telling myself that I was the problem and I was the reason why he left, which logically I know that's not true. But as a little kid, that gets ingrained in you. So I am standing there with him, watching him, and I hold space for his trauma. A lot of intergenerational trauma that I can see as an adult, but now I'm holding space for it there. And I tell him that he's only a person, and I like pull him off of this like metaphorical like pedestal I had him standing on, and I felt so sad for him. And then at that same moment, she began the sound bath, playing some gongs, some rain, some just like all these really cool things. And it felt like all that energy that I had been carrying in my body, and all that anger, more so towards my dad, like exits my body on the next like dissonant note. And just over and over again as she moves through the sound bath. And I let it pass like waves. And at that point, she also has me, actually, I don't know if she said this, but I imagine myself walking into the water, and this is adult me. I think little Isabel is sitting on the shore, and I kind of like that scene in the movie Moonlight, where I just lay back and I just let the waves take me, and I just float. And I let the waves wash over me, while I also am like seeing those prismatic sound waves again, and I watch them like go through me as I just like surrender to the ocean. I see a lot of like sunset colors with some like neons thrown in, a lot of like pinks, greens, even like an electric blue, while simultaneously I'm getting a lot of visuals of the people that I love. So I'm seeing Richard, my mom, my siblings, my stepdad Barry, like everyone who currently brings me so much joy and love. And I feel this deep sense of like, I already have everything I need inside of me, and I feel this release. It's a little like eerie, but I stayed in it and I felt like the waves wash over me and they just like continue to build with each breath, and then it's the release. And I just felt like how powerful my body is, and I wrote like the ocean calls me, and I instantly felt like Moana, and I kind of got distracted in my head because then I started singing the song. But anyways, I just let the waves continue to kind of go by as she finishes up the sound bath. So after the sound bath, we sit and do some more grounding just because we need to integrate back into reality. And I go and I sit out on her beautiful deck and I start writing. And I write, and I'm going to share with you guys what I actually wrote from that moment. I said, "I've held on to control for so long. My knuckles white, my forearms tired. I've feared that if I let go, I will fall. But I know that I won't fall. I will fly, and I will float, and I will soar through the wind and the trees. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. All that I am, all that I was, all that I will be is out of my control. And I vow to let go, to release my grip, and to let the waves take me where they move. I will not resist." So I closed up my journal, I said my goodbyes, and I drove back to LA. And I felt grounded and grateful. Even now, I'm still kind of feeling some of the effects of the sound bath, and am still in the process of letting go a lot of the anger that I have, and am coming to terms with, seeing my dad as a adult human rather than just my dad. And I think the work's going to continue, but it was a really, really meaningful experience for me, both the Integratron and the energy exchange with Ellen. So, just while I'm here, if anyone else is interested in, learning more about this or learning about inner child healing or energy work, I want to give you guys Ellen's info. You can connect with her on her website, www.tripswithellen.com. She's also on Instagram at tripswithellen, and she welcomes questions. And if anyone really is interested, what she'll do is you guys will set up an initial conversation, and it basically determines if this kind of medicine will be beneficial and to see if you guys are a good fit energetically. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it if you are in the LA area. Yeah. So believe it or not, the road trip's still not over at this point. We spent some more time in OC, and we went to a car show with Richard's dad, which was awesome. And we went to Disneyland, which was my first time. And as a lover of Disney World in Orlando, I do have to say that Disneyland is worth the hype, despite the large crowds and like unbearable heat. I definitely complained. I definitely cried, but it was so dope. My favorite ride, for those that care, was definitely Space Mountain. It was really dope. And then my favorite snack was the Dole Whip. Oh my God, guys, it's this pineapple like ice cream thing. I got it with a float with like pineapple juice, and it just like, so good. We ate it while in the line for Indiana Jones, and it was awesome. After we left the OC, the next part, which was we went on our way to the next part of our trip, which was Yosemite. Woo! I don't really have much to say about Yosemite, except for the fact that it was beautiful as always, and if I could live there forever, I would. I mean, honestly, like we did a hike, and then we just, hung out by the river and relaxed and just stayed present, and it was the most beautiful thing. And not to like radically like change the tune of the episode, but I do want to say that it was in Yosemite when we found out about the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it here, because even if I have a platform, even if I have a small platform, it's still a platform, and I just need to use it to say big, like, fuck you to those guys. Why they even still exist is, like, unbeknownst to me, because we didn't even fucking elect them, and they've been in power for so long, and just, like, fuck that. I heard the news while we were camping, and I just, like, I got so sad and angry, and just knowing how many people are going to die because of this, and just how unfair and cruel it is for people to try and tell other women what to do with their bodies. Like, it's the same people complaining about having to wear a goddamn mask. They want control over their bodies, but they don't want women to control their own. Like, fuck that. Like, I acknowledge that as a white woman, I will always be able to access safe abortion should I ever need one. But until that's the case for every uterus-carrying person on the planet, like, I'm not going to rest. So if you are like me and you are especially disappointed in this country, I give you permission to let it out, to be angry, to scream, to feel your feelings as full-heartedly as possible. And then once you've done that, then we can get to work. And what work, you ask? Well, Democrats will say to vote, which I think is fucking dumb, because we voted for Biden on the promise that he would codify Roe v. Wade, and look where we are now. So no, I don't think voting is the answer. While I definitely want all of you to vote in your upcoming local elections, but I think the answer to this, honestly, is protest and strikes and organizing, because those are the things that are going to make a difference. Like, we have to be loud, and we have to show people that we are not going to just accept this control. And, politicians are public servants, and it's about damn time, #Lizzo, that they are held accountable to that fact. They work for us. So if you are, curious about how you can help, what I'm going to do that, maybe you will want to do too is I'm donating currently monthly to abortionfunds.org, not to Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood already has enough money. So I want to make sure that my money is going to the states that need it the most. I'm also calling my representatives here in Seattle to put pressure on them so that they can, put pressure on Biden. And I'm also, showing up to protests in the community when I feel safe. But to be honest, large gatherings kind of scare me right now because of the amount of gun violence in this country, which is like another thing that I could go on about for hours. But because this is supposed to be a feel-good podcast, I just want to like wrap it up and end with this, that things are shitty right now. And when things are shitty, it's really hard to find things to be grateful for. So I urge all of you listening to firstly just like give yourself grace and patience and compassion to feel the way that you are feeling. Don't try to push them down. Don't try to cover them up or bury them. Like, let yourself be sad and angry and heartbroken and disappointed and all of the different feelings. And then spend some time taking care of yourself, because, you can't be a good activist without making sure that you are in the best place you can be, because it is so emotionally draining. So for me personally, I'm going to be writing a lot, drawing, painting, watching comfort TV. We just finished The Umbrella Academy, and right now we are watching Love Island, which I fucking love. And, Only Murders in the Building. So, watch TV shows that make you feel good. Do not do true crime. I know some of you love that shit, but, I cannot do it. It makes me way more anxious. I don't understand why people want to watch more violent things when we are literally living it. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is, there is no correct way to be feeling, and it's okay if you don't have the words to articulate it yet. But I just want you all to know that I'm here for you, and I see you, and I am you, and that together we will find a way out of this darkness. Not just for the future of our children and their children, but for us, because we fucking deserve it, Anyways, that was our road trip. I know there was a lot in this episode, and I'm sorry if it felt like a mishmash, but I really just wanted to share with you guys how I'm feeling and where I'm at, and maybe you guys will resonate with it. I'm going to put up some blog posts sharing more about energy work, sound baths, inner child healing, as well as links to Ellen. So in case you're interested in working with her, I'll also put up, some resources for abortion funds. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. I'm really excited to start doing more of these. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, please just let me know. Thank you for listening to this episode, and be sure to tune in to a new episode every 2 weeks on Sunday. This podcast is free to listen to and available in any app that supports podcasts. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate and review wherever you are listening. Don't forget to take your meds.